X-rays were negative, and then got an MRI. So yeah, when I woke up today and it didn't feel a whole lot better, it was felt like it was the best next step.
Just to confirm, it's a broken wrist, like a fracture.
Yeah. I'm flying back tonight to meet with the Boston hand specialist tomorrow. So hopefully, I don't know kind of the nuts and bolts of it, but should find all of that out hopefully in the next coming days.
In your mind, you're going to play again this season?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
Curtis Mead right there, a little Q&A. That probably happened right about the time that we left air last night when we were still pondering whether or not he would be in the lineup ahead of last night's game. We are now left to ponder as we welcome you into today's edition of The Drive. Mark Paulette along with Ernie Clark in the Greenway Equipment Studios. We're now left to ponder whether we'll see Curtis Mead again this season, because he is on his way back to Boston to see a hand specialist. The MRI today showed a fracture in that wrist, or last night I should say, showed a fracture in that wrist. He's on the IL, and he's going back to see if he needs season-ending surgery. The latest just turn in this roller coaster season for the Boston Red Sox.
I have a couple of things to say about that. First off, I am looking at a quote that I pulled out of somewhere as I was kind of researching this, having not been around for a while. Dodged a bullet.
Yep, thought so.
Apparently you ran into it with the left wrist.
Well, dodged a bullet, just like Roman Anthony and Garrett Crochet did.
And that was the second thing I was going to say. If Roman Anthony has just a little break in his ring finger, at the bottom of his ring finger.
Little strain in the ligament or something.
If this new guy, Mead, is going to be out for the rest of the year with a broken wrist, I don't know that we can expect Roman Anthony to about, 2028?
Yeah, it's the hand specialist for the Boston Red Sox might be a position that they need moving forward, because it has been an unfortunate year with some of these injuries. But Curtis Mead, second at bat after you get him. And regardless of what you thought of the trade, like Aaron and I spent all yesterday not really trying to make sense of it, because in a vacuum, like, it's what this team needed, right? You needed a bat, not the pitching. Long term, I think I like Early a lot more than I like Curtis Mead, but I was...
How do you know, though?
You don't. It's all speculation at this point, because neither guy is an established thing at the major league level. I was willing to at least punt on the rest of this year and say, well, like I just said, it makes him better in a vacuum, so you can't really hammer the idea of the trade, because it's Craig Breslow trying to go out and improve the major league team.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, this is
what
the Red Sox get.
Murphy's Law, as far as Breslow goes.
It is. It really is.
But now they've got to, the question is, will they do another one? Who we got left here? We got Bennett and we got Tolle, and
that's the
must
thing.
be somebody in AAA that's pitching pretty well that we can trade.
Do you go out and do you swing another deal? Do you go out and you call up Franklin Arias, who is now in Worcester?
I'm going to tell you about Franklin Arias, or Arias, whatever, however you pronounce it.
Don't know here.
I don't think I think it's probably Arias. They're not going to bring him up, because if they bring him up, because we're looking at a lockout next year.
Yeah.
If they bring him up to the 40-man roster, and then they have a lockout,
he's on the clock.
He can't play. He's out. He can't play. If he stays in the minor leagues, he can go play for Worcester next year. And he's only 20 years old. He's going to be 21 in November. So he can get whatever experience there is to be gotten next spring while the major leaguers are out. If he's still in the minor leagues at the end of this year and hasn't come up, he can play minor league baseball.
The minors still operate with a lockout?
Sure.
I don't know.
I mean,
that was just a question.
The answer is pretty much. It has been in the case past, yes, in a lot of cases, but who knows? But there is a better chance that he would continue to play and develop if he's still in the minor leagues. And what are you going to get out of it by bringing him up? I don't know. He's hitting 3-something, 315, 318, something like that.
Just took Chris Bassett deep.
Yeah. So there you go. So he's certainly the next guy. It's funny. Just think about all the shortstops that the Red Sox have or don't have when you think about Meyer and Story and Arias and
it's going out to target one at the deadline.
Kind of Leper.
That's what they need.
Ziegler.
That's where the hole is, up the middle.
Who else? Romy Gonzalez. Is it Romy Gonzalez?
And
there's another one I'm missing, by the way.
But that's what happens when you park a couple revolving doors at positions and you're left in the middle of the summer to try to scramble and figure out what to do now.
And also when you don't necessarily acquire people with positions in mind.
Yeah.
Oh, the guy can play short. Red Sox used to draft shortstops every year in the first round because they were the best athletes available. And then they had to figure out what to do with them. Well, at least you had, some options there. But here you got guys that really aren't used to playing anywhere. And this Mead guy had played like
he
4 games at second base.
Very little second base. He was basically a third baseman by trade, but you got Caleb Durbin here, so he had played a little second in the past, like 20 games last year. Going to park him over there. Now it's going to be very interesting to see what the motivation is for Craig Breslow here going forward over the next week. Do you feel that you have to go out and try to recapture that momentum that you thought you just seized with the trade right there, getting a bat in your lineup? Not only that, a right-handed one. I mean, I don't know. It felt like a move as well that industry sources, it's not just like us around here, Red Sox fans, industry sources pretty widely said, if we're just looking at the two players, we feel that Washington got the better of the deal. It was an overpay on the part of the Red Sox. So is that also in the back of your mind that, geez, I just overpaid for a deal that we now aren't being able to take advantage of for a year and don't want to maybe be as aggressive or as risky as I would have if that didn't happen?
I don't think he thinks of it that way. As a matter of fact, I think he said when he made the deal,
he did.
I'm not as much concerned with winning the deal as I am making the Red Sox a better team.
He expressed a change in mindset, because it had been the former kind of up until he said that.
We don't know exactly when Early's coming back off the injured list either, do we?
He's scheduled for a rehab somewhere around like August 3rd, like to begin his rehab assignment.
We know how that works with everybody else they've had out.
Well, watch, now that he's in Washington, he'll be back on the mound in 2 weeks and just firing out there.
Because he's also one of the pitchers for the Red Sox that has neared or surpassed his previous career high in terms of innings pitched.
Yeah, those three young lefties were all creeping up on it.
So, I don't know that. Well,
it didn't sound like Washington was overly eager to rush him into the picture this year.
They are about a 500 team, but that means something different in the National League compared to what it does in the American League. So maybe they're not quite as. I mean, I'm sure they're still alive for a playoff spot.
They're on the fringe of the race,
left.
not right in the heart of it like they would be in the American League.
Right, they would need more than Connolly Early to do that. And that's not put down to Connolly Early at all. I mean, he might go out and pitch great for the rest of the season, but they're looking at him in the long term.
But I mean, what you just said, how does that now change the math for the Red Sox that you're minus a Connolly Early? Those other two names are nearing their innings limits. Sonny Gray just had a little bit of a bump in the road his last turn because he had been so incredible all season long. Suarez has dealt with injuries for the entirety of the year. Do the Red Sox now need to go out and acquire some sort of innings eater when they've been riding the strength of their pitching to this point in the year?
I mean, what do you give up for an innings eater? You don't give up anybody that's part of your future plans. Patrick Sandoval, he's going to pitch tonight, I think. Yep. I mean, he's a guy that fits that description in terms of what the Red Sox maybe hope to get out of him. Maybe he provides a little bit of an answer to that tonight if he comes out. I mean, he's pitched, a time or two?
I think this is his fourth start tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, because he was solid his first time out, not so great his second time, and he got the ERA back down to a respectable 3.21 heading into tonight, his last turn around the rotation. But just think about not even 10 days, a week from now, because the trade deadline will be in the rear view
Monday.
At that point.
Yeah, Monday at 6 o'clock.
Think about this time next week if the biggest move the Red Sox made was Curtis Mead, who's now potentially out for the rest of the year, and you're left to rely on Patrick Sandoval and Brian Bayo now to fill these spots.
Well, see, there's the other. But there is the other.
It is
innings eater right there.
But then it's Trevor Story coming back and looking ahead to these other guys coming back, and it's like, well, it's another deadline of them doing nothing.
See, that's where, well, Chad Tracy's gonna earn his money here. Because, I mean, I don't think he owes Trevor Story a thing, by the way.
No, and he's run the ship like it's a true meritocracy.
Right.
Like, if you're playing well, you get the job the next day.
Yeah. I mean, so let's quickly go through the pitching rotation as it exists right now.
Yep.
It's, Suarez is back.
Gray is in there.
Bennett,
last
Tolle,
night.
And Sandoval. There's your five starters. Who's after? Anybody after them?
There isn't.
Well, then it's Bayo
who's hanging in the bullpen right now.
Yeah.
And then it's looking at guys like maybe does Tanner Houck factor back into this? But we were talking yesterday with a Red Sox reporter who was like, we're going on 2 months left here in the season.
Right.
Sean McAdam, who was like, we're closing in on the end of this thing for guys that haven't pitched going on in the better part of a year or 2 years at this point to think that they're going to be able to A, overcome their injury, and then B, ramp it up in time to actually contribute this year is asking a lot.
56 games left, right? 55 and 51. Yep. 56 games left, so that's a lot of time. That's like 7, 8, 9 starts for anybody in a rotation at this point. So, I mean, I don't know. They probably have no veterans in Worcester at this point in terms of like pitchers.
No, as far as arms, yeah.
And really, there's nobody. Well, I don't know that there's anybody that you would bring up to pitch now. I mean, I know they got a couple of very good young pitchers, but
they're a bit
do you want to bring them up this soon?
Yeah. Anthony Ionsons of the world and those guys that are starting to make a name for themselves around Portland.
They brought Tolley up pretty early last year, although he was, older.
He was a college guy, so that was one thing that I think was working.
Veteran. One of the young ones that they've drafted highly in the last couple of years also played at an SEC school.
Witherspoon, the guy who was the pick last summer.
Yeah, okay. He needs a year at least.
Well, I mean, at this point, he would be on that Tolley track, but I haven't heard that name this season.
I mean, because the problem is you got all these guys, these, Stories. Nobody wants him because of his salary and the fact that he stinks.
Yeah.
And then you got Marcelo Meyer, who's living off his...
Still going to show it at the major league
level. Being a
level.
number 4 draft pick, and how much can you really get out of him? He's A, hitting .223 for the Red Sox, and B, going on year number 4 where he's been out more with injuries than he's actually played.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like they're teaming with all kinds of, at least positional-wise, trade bait.
The realities of a season where you're 4 games over 500 maybe starting to set in a little more than last week when we were still riding high on just winning every time the Red Sox took the field and it seemed like they were surging towards the trade deadline. Now you're starting to get some of those arrows that come your way over the course of 162 flying back at them.
Yeah, but they, they're the number 2 wild card team.
Plus 1.5 on number 3.
Yeah. Cleveland, I believe, is the next one, right?
Yep.
And then there's 3 or 4 teams that are, somewhere between 2 and 5 games below 500 that are in the mix. But
keep treading water.
They still have the same problem they have before they made the trade for Mead, though. I mean, you look at the last 2 games they played against the A's.
Silent.
Yeah, pretty much the offense was not there, except they got one big hit from Rafaela that won in the first game, and then they only had 5 hits, I think, last night.
Yep.
Lost 4-3, so it wasn't like they've solved all the offensive problems. So which way do you go, right? I mean, do you go for a pitcher? Do you go for a relief pitcher? That's one of the first things you hear about is relief pitching. What do I hear about? I hear about relief pitching, catcher.
That'd be expensive.
Yeah, and I forget a couple others there, position-wise, but there's multiple positions there looking for
Still
help.
Middle, you're looking for help.
Yeah.
And like you said, a couple of arms out there, maybe an innings eater or a guy at the back end of the bullpen to shore it up. So it's a rather long shopping list that Craig Breslow has over the next few days heading into this weekend and the trade deadline on Monday.
I think he will make deals, but I don't expect him to spend any money. I mean, the names that are getting thrown out there, like Jeremy Pena, for one, the University of Maine grad product,
needs a contract.
He's looking to get a contract and is probably deserving of a contract more than the Red Sox are going to cough up. I would guess. I mean, that trade they made the other night with early for Mead.
2 controllable guys.
2 controllable guys at cheap bucks. And so, it's amazing how much they've actually got, invested in their rosters, like $270 million.
That's what Kennedy and Henry will tell you, but it's as far as that $270 million contributing to winning baseball games in 2026, you lose the value real quick.
Well, you got 9 or 10 with Bayo, 9 or 10 with the guy we were talking about at Worcester. That's
Christian Campbell.
Yeah, Christian Campbell got a big contract. I mean, it's all over the place, and there are levels to being. There are aprons in baseball. I find out just as much as there are in basketball, and they're kind of not that far. I think $5 million from the next one up. So
well, and like you're talking about, if there's the looming threat of a lockout next year too, John Henry is looking at the 2027 books and saying we need to make sure that these are.
Paying these guys.
There's nothing left in that cupboard except for the absolute non-perishables that we have to keep with us.
Calling them up from Greenville.
Myself and Ernie live here in the Greenway Equipment Studios, brought to you by Greenway Equipment Sales, your locally owned John Deere dealer. See the Smith Brothers in Bangor and Ellsworth, because nothing runs like a Deere. We're also brought to you by Next Home Experience, the market leader. Get looped and get sold with Next Home Experience. And by your local family-owned McDonald's, Main Street and Union Street in Bangor, Wilson Street in Brewer. Get an extra value meal with extra value when using your McD app in July. A classic quarter pounder with cheese or a filet of fish. Extra value meal, only $8 on that McD app. When we return on The Drive, Conor Ryan from Boston.com joins us talking Sox, C's, and so much more. Yeah, the Sox tried to battle back with a couple of long balls with 2 outs in the 9th inning. Connor Wong, a pinch hit 2-run homer. And then Tony Seagulls, Anthony Siegler at the top of the lineup, a 396-foot flyout onto the warning track to end that game. As the Red Sox fell, the second one in Sacramento. They're now 55-51 on the season.
That apparently would have been a home run in 7 Major League ballparks.
Not in that AAA park, though.
No.
Not enough in that AAA park, which helped him the night before with Cedar Rafaela's eventual game-winning grand slam. The Drive brought to you by Heroes Sports Grill and Entertainment Center. Heroes is the place to be in downtown Bangor and at heroesportsgrill.com. Also brought to you by UMaine Athletics. This fall, it's time to pack the stands at Alphonse Stadium and cheer on Maine football. Season tickets on sale now. They give you the best value and the best seats for every home game. Score yours at goblackbears.com/tickets. Let's go to the Heroes Hotline for the first time in today's show and check in with Conor Ryan, joining us from Boston.com and the Boston Globe. And Conor, we'll start with the Red Sox because, of course, the news that Curtis Mead, the big trade they just swung, we might see him for all of 2 at-bats this year. Your thoughts on just the latest crazy turn and the roller coaster ride that's been the 2026 Red Sox?
Yeah, it's a brutal development for the Red Sox. And you look at, what a guy like Curtis Mead, who, yes, he maybe doesn't have the longest track record, right, of being an established slugger, but what he's done so far this year with the Nationals, you look at, putting a guy like him in the middle of the Red Sox lineup, a group that still ranks 29th in the majors as far as home runs, a guy that has a really unique profile in terms of the power has been in this year, but also doesn't really chase all that much. And what do you get? You get a strikeout in the first at-bat, and then you got a broken wrist in the second one. So the Red Sox, as much of a roller coaster ride as this year has been, as far as the way they've played as of late, you look at how much hasn't really gone their way, whether you look at, the Mead injury now, you look at Garrett Crochet, where it feels like there's no timeline for him to return. Roman Anthony, the same thing. And it kind of it has some parallels with Anthony, too, where a check swing hits him on the hand. And at first, it feels like the Red Sox felt that they dodged a bullet. They didn't think Roman Anthony was really going to miss all that much time, and it doesn't seem like he's anywhere at all close to getting back. And you look at on Monday night, the Red Sox, Chad Tracy pretty much said they thought that they dodged a bullet as far as Mead's injury. And now, as you guys said, you look at just the timeline for what a broken wrist could bring. He may not be back until maybe October if the Red Sox even get to that point later on this year.
So what do you do now if you're Craig Breslow? You just used one of your potentially most valuable trade chips to get Mead, and he lasts all of 2 at-bats, and you still have the same need that you had before you got Mead, and that is another bat in the lineup.
Yeah, it's tough for Craig Breslow and the Red Sox. I think even with them bringing in Mead, I think the Red Sox are still trying to be aggressive as far as adding another impact bat in the lineup. You look at the catcher position as one where there's a lot of opportunity there to add some thump to that lineup. Obviously, it doesn't help that a guy like Shea Langeliers, who would have made a lot of sense as a potential a pickup for the Red Sox, he's now expected to miss most, if not all, the rest of this year with the A's. But you look at the catcher position, you look at shortstop, where there's some guys like C.J. Abrams, Otto Lopez, who's not really a power threat, but you look at what he's done this year for the Miami Marlins, high contact rate, great defense, a guy that's under team control for a couple of years. I think even if Mead was healthy in the middle of the lineup, I think the Red Sox were trying to be aggressive this deadline to add another impact bat, and I think that that focus is going to be even greater now that it feels like Mead's probably not going to be in the lineup for the rest of the regular season at the very least.
Yeah, you talk about just Craig Breslow seeming more aggressive. He kind of spoke to that mindset shift after the Mead trade, saying he's no longer trying to win every deal. He's trying to improve the major league roster. How aggressive do you think he would be from here as far as packaging? Like Ernie was talking about, you just trade away Connolly early, who you can't imagine the Red Sox go too deep down the prospect list here at the deadline, but knowing that the American League is kind of there for the taking with how poor it's been all season long, like where would you feel comfortable in going versus where do you draw the line of not really worth it for the 2026 team?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? It's a great conundrum for what Craig Breslow is willing to do. As you said, with that quote about not trying to win every trade, I do wonder if they look at just the landscape of the American League, and yes, they might like, let's look at, the rest of their pitching. Even though you move on from Connolly early, you still have Peyton Tolley, you still have Jake Bennett, who's been a revelation this year. You look down in the minor leagues with Anthony Ianson, who's been unbelievable at Double-A Portland. They still have a lot of pitchers they could draw from if they needed to. And you look at kind of their recent track record over the last couple of years of really building up that pitching pipeline, which hasn't been a strength of the Red Sox over the last couple of decades as far as developing their own pitching prospects. That's kind of changed, and I do wonder if the Red Sox look at that and say, all right, as much as we might love these remaining pitchers we have in our system, if we can flip one of them for an impact bat, or even you look at top prospects in their system, like Franklin Arias is their top prospect, the guy who's been unbelievable at Double-A Portland, now up at Triple-A. He has the makings of a future, franchise shortstop. But if you're the Red Sox and moving him allows you to bring in a safer bet, a guy that's going to give you assured production like an Otto Lopez or C.J. Abrams, as much as that trade, may not look all that great 5-6 years down the road if Arias is thriving with the new team, if it brings in an impact bat right now that helps out this team in the next 3, 4, 5 years, I do wonder if even if it might pay Craig Breslow and his staff to do it, I do wonder if they pull the trigger on a deal like that.
How much more money do you suppose they want to spend with a work stoppage looming in the offseason in terms of the type of player that they acquire, i.e. somebody that's an established major leaguer versus somebody that maybe they can swap prospects with?
Yeah, I do think that kind of looms over not just the Red Sox, but every team going into this deadline as far as the assets they want to bring in, whether they're taking on money, whether it's, is it more palatable to bring in a rental per se, right? Like, would they rather, instead of giving up a lot of assets and a guy that's going to be here for a year, would you rather give up maybe lesser to bring in, let's say, like George Springer, right, who's a pending free agent, where you bring in a guy that maybe helps you out a little bit, but also he's off the books after this upcoming year? Do the Red Sox maybe place more of an emphasis on a guy who, has a couple of years of team control, where even if there's a work stoppage or something else that happens in 2027, they still have a guy on a really team-friendly deal for the next couple of years, which I could see them looking at maybe a guy like Abrams or maybe a guy like Otto Lopez, who is on a arbitration-laden contract for the next couple of years, as opposed to, let's say, like Jeremy Pena, right, who's 28 years old with Houston. Great player, a guy that would help them out, but also I think only has one more year of team control after this year. That's the guy that, yes, he might help you out for this stretch run, but then you look at, if you're missing games in 2027 or it gets even worse and the whole season's in jeopardy, well, Pena is a guy who, in terms of a long-term asset, really loses his value, and you're probably paying a pretty steep price to bring him aboard in the first place.
Talking with Conor Ryan from Boston.com and the Boston Globe. Of course, the Mead for early swap, nowhere near the most shocking trade of the summer when it comes to Boston sports. That mantle is held by Jaylen Brown going to the Philadelphia 76ers, where we've since learned that he'll be teaming up with LeBron James and forming the newest super team in the NBA. Conor, I'm just curious of your thoughts on everything from the trade to how you see that working in Philadelphia to what's coming next in Boston. I mean, it's such a weird thing to try to pick out one question from, so just answer that however you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating, if not devastating, domino effect, I think, in terms of just the way the entire power, landscape has shifted across the Eastern Conference with this move. And, I don't know if the Celtics, not being willing to give up, younger assets like Baylor Shireman and Ugo Gonzalez, if they look back on that now and they think, well, if we just gave up those guys and got Giannis, like, one, we have probably a better return than we would have gotten from the Sixers, where you get Paul George, who's 34, 35 years old, and a couple of draft picks. From the Celtics, I'd rather pay a premium to bring in a guy like Giannis, who I think makes you a legitimate threat next to Jason Tatum, as opposed to what actually played out, where you get this return from Philly. Jaylen Brown is now on a rival in the Atlantic Division, the same team that bounced you out of the playoffs this past year. And now when LeBron James is now hitting free agency and looks across the landscape of the Eastern Conference, likes what he sees, understandably, with a pretty stacked Phillies team. So you look at just how much things have changed for this Celtics team across the season, where you kind of go in with low expectations, they exceed them, you get to March and you feel like, all right, could this Celtics team really make a run in a wide open Eastern Conference, especially with Jason Tatum coming back? They then blow a 3-1 lead, and now you look just a few months later, you don't have Jaylen Brown on the team. You have a pretty underwhelming return, and by extension, they more or less propped up a team in the Sixers who are going to give the Celtics fits for the next couple of years at the very least.
Well, I'm certain there will be chemistry issues in Philadelphia, though.
That's the hope, right?
Yeah, first, and will Embiid play more than 25 or 30 games? But that's I think of the 76ers as being just as interesting, if not more interesting, than the Celtics, because Jaylen Brown wanted his own team.
Didn't want to share time.
Finally got his own team. Then he got traded, and now he's no better than 3 or 4 on that particular team with Maxey and Embiid when he's healthy, and now LeBron James. That's going to be kind of interesting to watch during the course of the winter, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. How it all plays out is going to be fascinating in terms of just overall minutes. You do wonder if just the fact they've got that much talent, if you're LeBron James and you're 41 years old, and it's already incredible what he's doing at this stage of his career, but he can more or less put his feet up for a couple of months now. And if that means all of a sudden that BJ Edgecombe is getting a lot of minutes, Tyrese Maxey, I think, played the most minutes in the NBA this past year, but lightens up the workload for those kind of guys. And instead of it being, 5 different mouths to feed over the course of the season, you're limiting guys' workloads where you don't have to necessarily work a guy like LeBron James very hard. You don't have to rely on Joel Embiid to be your go-to guy for 82 games. And all of a sudden you have guys healthy for the playoffs. I almost feel like that's the way the Sixers are going to probably approach things. And if you have all those guys healthy, or at least 3 or 4 of those guys healthy for a playoff run, they're going to be a really tough team to beat. So how they manage it's going to be fascinating, but I think you look at just the overall talent and the flexibility of having all those guys just available night in and night out, I think is going to make them a really tough out when you look at just the way the season's going to play out.
What has to be the outcome here over the next 3 or 4 years so that everybody that's a Celtics fan can be happy with what they've just witnessed over the last 3 or 4 months? I don't know. I mean, this is something that's going to take some digging to get out of, I think.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? Because as much as you kind of look at, and I think if you're trying to view a positive outlook, you're more or less kind of banking on this Sixers team that has all this talent, more or less replicating what the Nets were, a decade ago,
right,
where the Celtics traded Pierce and Garnett to them. And it feels like they were a team that was going to be a problem for maybe not 3-4 years, but they were going to be a title contender for a year or two, and it just imploded. I think that might be wishful thinking when you look at how old that Nets team was compared to, again, the Sixers have 41-year-old LeBron James, but also they've got, Jaylen Brown still in his prime. Tyrese Maxey's very young. BJ Edgecombe, who I was really impressed with, is, going into his second year in the league. Like, I think even if there's chemistry issues or that team isn't necessarily hitting the ground running this year, the talent alone and just how much skill they have, how, a lot of those guys aren't even in their primes yet, that team's going to be a problem. So barring just a bunch of injuries and the Celtics all of a sudden fall into a top 5 pick, I don't know how you can really spin the positive outlook as far as, how much, moving on from Jaylen Brown for Paul George and a couple of draft picks that might end up being in the late 20s makes you a better team. It's almost like, all right, you're banking on guys like Gonzalez and Shinerman taking a big step forward, but how far are those guys going to take you when you look at just what the other alternatives could have been, whether it's just keeping Jaylen Brown and running back the same crew you had, trying to pony up even more to get Giannis at the time. Like, the scenario the Bruins are now in, not the easiest way to map out a lot of positives as far as just how this summer has gone for them so far.
Yeah, it is. Brad's got his work cut out for him. He has got his work cut out for him here over the rest of this summer, next offseason too, when hopefully he can turn this money into the next superstar on the Boston Celtics. But Connor, we appreciate the time you took for us today, talking Sox, talking C's, and trying to make sense of it all with us here on The Drive.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course, Conor Ryan right there from Boston.com and the Boston Globe. The one team you didn't hear us hit on, the New England Patriots, that's because on the other side of the break, coming up, we have the editor of Patriots.com, Paul Perillo, to tell us all about that squad. Christian Gonzalez right there. He has been all the talk around Patriot camp since it opened up on Saturday because he is in line to get himself a nice new contract at some point here. We've all been waiting for he and Devon Witherspoon to sign their new deal. And Denzel Ward swoops in and says, you know what? Thank you. I'll take 62 over 2 and become the new highest paid defensive back in the history of the NFL. Got to imagine Gonzalez or Witherspoon still set that mark. And to find out more about that contract and everything else going on down in Foxborough so far, we check in with the editor of Patriots.com on that Heroes Hotline. He, of course, is Paul Perillo. Paul, Christian Gonzalez he's showing up every day. He's certainly not holding out in any way. Robert Kraft is saying they gave him an offer that would make him the richest defensive back in NFL history. What's going on here? We're waiting around.
Yeah, I kind of, as I was driving home last night after practice, today being an off day, I was kind of thinking I wouldn't be stunned if, we had some news. So far, I haven't seen anything like that, so I guess we'll have to just keep waiting. But yeah, it was a mild surprise to see Gonzalez taking full part, all 11 on 11 stuff, all the things that we didn't see him do in minicamp. He showed up in minicamp, but really just did individual work, no real 11 on 11 stuff. And, so far in training camp, he's been a full participant, and I was a little surprised at that. We'll see. He says that won't change starting tomorrow when the full pads come on. So we'll see if his level of participation changes as camp continues.
What exactly is the sense of urgency here for both sides to get something done now?
So obviously for Gonzalez, the sooner the better, limit the risk of, injury or something happening, and that in some way could affect his market value. For the team, and I think that this is an occasional problem for some of the teams in the NFL. I think the longer you wait, the more it generally costs you. I am not privy to the behind-the-scenes details. I don't know what kind of numbers have been offered. I don't know, with all due respect to my longtime boss, Robert Kraft, I think making him the highest-paid cornerback in football and the highest-paid Patriot in team history is was sort of assumed. I think those things were kind of no-brainers. So I think the question is going to be how the contract is structured, how much money he gets guaranteed, how much he gets, in 2026, 2027. Does he have to wait for the big money? Does he get a big signing bonus that he gets up front? And then how much is guaranteed? I think those things are probably the sticking point. And on Gonzalez's side, does he want to be the highest paid cornerback in football, or does he want to set a bar? You look at some of these other contracts that are getting signed, it's not necessarily about being the highest paid player at a position the way Denzel Ward just was by, about $500,000. Will Anderson just signed a deal. It was about, $8 or $10 million higher than the next highest paid edge rusher. So, you wonder if Gonzalez is looking to set a precedent and set a bar significantly higher than the next paid. So, again, all these things are relevant questions. Unfortunately, good for them, good for the sides involved, but unfortunately for us in the media, they're all playing it pretty close to the vest and not giving us much information.
I'm curious your thoughts on, and this question really doesn't have anything to do with the Patriots or necessarily the NFL, but this idea of always looking to set the market when it comes to the next contract that's up that could potentially do it. And we were just talking about Jaylen Brown in the last segment, where he gets the largest contract in NBA history at a time where he's not even thought to be the best player on his own team, right? And Christian Gonzalez now may be the highest paid defensive back in NFL history, but is he currently the best defensive back in the game? I'm curious your thoughts, Paul, on how the timing of things and how we're always looking to reset the market, whether or not the actual individual is worthy of resetting the market on.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that is a big problem right now in sports in general. And I would say in Gonzalez's defense that he is a lot closer to the best cornerback in football than Jaylen Brown is, was at the time to being the best player in the league. I would say Patrick Surtain certainly a better player, better cover guy than Gonzalez. Maybe Derek Stingley. And then you're getting to these two guys, Witherspoon and Gonzalez. I think they're probably in that conversation. But yeah, I think your larger point is an accurate one. It all boils down to your timing, and the most recent guy to sign is the highest paid, not necessarily the best one. And yeah, I think that's where the economics of the game. When sometimes it gets frustrating as a fan when you watch, when these guys are, haggling over millions of dollars, and how much is enough? You're making 32 or 34 or 35 million a year. How much difference does it make for you in the long term, other than so you can say, well, I made $3 million more than the next highest paid cornerback. So I can understand the frustration there on all sides. And
those standings change every couple of months during the offseason as somebody else signs. So, I mean, I guess you have the video or the audio of you bragging about being the richest paid cornerback in the league, but it only lasts for a very short period of time before
starts for
somebody else gets it. I guess my question, though, is just in terms of all that, but in the Patriots case in particular, Drake May comes into play here pretty soon, right? And I don't know how deep.
We'll be talking about this time next year, and hopefully it has already been taken care of by this time next year, and we're not dealing with it during training camp.
And those are apples and oranges relative to the final dollar amount relative to Christian Gonzalez, correct?
Probably on an annual basis, you can double it. The highest paid quarterback is probably going to be nearing $70 million. So, yeah, I would say that's apples to oranges.
Yeah. Well, so let's stay on this lane for a second, though, where we were just talking about Jaylen Brown, and the talk now in the NBA is that you can't have two players taking up 70% of your cap. What does that do to the Patriots cap space when you have potentially Christian Gonzalez being one of the 2 or 3 highest paid at his position, and Drake May coming in at a time that he has to reset the quarterback market, which, like you're talking about, doubles it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's about the dollars. The money, and the owners sometimes are unwilling to pay the amount of money. The cap situation can be rectified easily. I mean, I don't think that will be an issue at all. You look at what the Philadelphia Eagles have done. You look at what the Los Angeles Rams have done. They've been consistent winners over the past, 6-8 years. They've been constantly, both of those franchises have been constantly in the mix in the NFC, and they're constantly juggling these high-priced veteran contracts and dealing with that kind of stuff. Jalen Hurts, speaking of the timing, was the highest paid or among the highest paid quarterbacks in football when he signed his deal, and that hasn't prevented them from, even this week, signing a mega deal for a guy like Jalen Carter. So the cap dollars are there. It's the question is, and I think not to switch this to the Celtics, I don't think it was a cap issue as much as it was a finance issue. They didn't want to pay Tatum and Brown that amount of money. They could have under the rules if they wanted to pay the luxury tax dollars, but they didn't want to do that. So Jaylen Brown is a fixer, and I think it would be certainly unfortunate if we're seeing these kinds of things happen in the NFL with how much bigger the salary cap is and how much more revenue the NFL generates as compared to the other professional sports leagues.
So what is Robert Kraft going to do when Drake May's agent asked for $70 million as like an opening offer on their part when he got used to not having to pay Tom Brady top of the line money because Brady had different ideas about how much was enough, I guess.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that worked there with Brady. We don't have to go back to history. Brady was the highest paid quarterback in football at one time, much like everybody else. I think his sort of taking less, he absolutely could have been the highest paid quarterback in football every year. He could have demanded that, and he didn't. He did. I would say he was a team first guy. He was not, necessarily underpaid though.
Right.
It's not like he was, not getting anything. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the Kraft family sort of takes umbrage with people that classify it that way. But the fact of the matter is, like I said, Brady could have demanded every last dollar, and he didn't. I'd be surprised if Drake May approaches it the same way. I think you'll probably look at it like most of these guys do. And I don't hold it against a guy like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or any of these other guys. When they come up for their deals, they want to maximize their earning potential, and they earned it. They deserve it. I think you saw in Kansas City. That's a pretty pedestrian team without Patrick Mahomes on the field, and I think we would all say the same thing about what we watched about the Buffalo Bills the 20 years prior to Josh Allen's arrival. It was a laughingstock. The Patriots just went there for a scrimmage every year. So I think Drake May would be well within his right. And this is all, I'm making a big assumption here. This is assuming that what we saw last year is what Drake May is.
Right.
And he just continues to build off that this year. Now, if he takes a big step back or he gets hurt, then maybe the conversation next offseason is different. But if he puts up another MVP caliber season and he goes into year 4, he's very much going to be in line for that kind of a payday.
Patriots wide receiver room is a little crowded. A lot of attention going to the names at the top of it in A.J. Brown and Romeo Doubs. I want to ask you about a couple other names in that room, though, because from what I'm reading, Kayshon Boutte is turning heads, granted against Air so far at camp, but we know the situation around him coming in with this offseason and into training camp. And another name in that room, Mac Hollins, I kind of look at him and his size and also his blocking ability. And do you think, Paul, he could factor into the Patriots' thin depth at tight end and maybe slide down to the end of the line a little bit to help out there?
Yeah, I mean, he is a good blocking wide receiver, and they do utilize him in a lot of those kinds of things. Now, I'd be very surprised to see a 220 or so pound guy, you know, in a 3-point stance at the end of the line as a traditional tight end. I don't see that happening, but he absolutely can help out in the running game. That's what he was used as last year. He's a big guy, and he's also a pretty solid receiver. He still has deep speed and can get behind the coverage. So you started off this by talking about their room being a little crowded. It's not just crowded; it's pretty deep in terms of talent. I think Boutte is a guy who last year in a limited role consistently made plays, and we're seeing right now in training camp. I mean, again, we haven't put pads on yet, but all 3 days they had regular practices. Kayshon Boutte turned in a big play. So I think he's probably not going to be in the mix before too long here. I think they'll try to move him, but it's not a bad guy to have as an extra piece, in the puzzle behind Brown, Doubs, Douglas, Holland. It's a pretty deep group there, and I can't really recall them having this amount of depth at that position probably since the Randy Moss, Wes Welker 07 group with Dante Stallworth, Jabbar Gaffney, and those guys. So I think it's a nice luxury for Drake May to have so many weapons.
Is it too early to ask about things that you have been excited about in a positive way out of training camp so far, or something that you've kind of been a little disappointed in or a little worried about seeing what they're putting out there? Or is that still to come?
I grew up in Boston, so I'm going to handle the disappointing part first because that's my name.
Yeah.
So I would say that as excited as I am about the wide receiver group, I haven't really seen it yet with A.J. Brown and mostly Romeo Doubs. Doubs in particular, I think, has struggled a little bit to get open, to create any kind of separation. Certainly, both of those guys are learning the system and still getting acclimated, but it's been a work in progress with Drake May so far. So I would say that has been, let's call it a small C concern. I don't think it's anything necessarily to worry about yet. They're just getting underway. On the flip side, probably related to that fact, their cornerbacks, Gonzalez and Davis have been really good. Charles Woods actually showed some physicality with Brown, I thought, during yesterday's practice. Unfortunately, Woods left that practice with an injury, so we'll see tomorrow if it's anything that's going to keep him out of the lineup. But I would say the coverage in the early going to training camp has been pretty impressive, and I think the secondary might be shaping up as a real strength for the team with Kevin Byard and Craig Woodson on the back end.
He's Paul Perillo, editor of Patriots.com, keeping an eye on training camp. As he said, the pads go on tomorrow, so things starting to get real. Paul, we appreciate the time you took for us here to tell us about how things are going so far. We'll make sure to check in with you as we head toward the regular season as well.
No, sounds good, guys. The train is moving. We're on it.
That it is. Happy football season, Paul.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Paul Perillo right there joining us on the Heroes Hotline. That's going to do it for the first hour of today's show. The Drive brought to you by Natural Lawn Care of America. If you want greener, healthier lawn without harsh chemicals, Natural Lawn Care of America can help. Organic base care with Tick Ranger protection. Call 721-0600. or visit naturallawncare.com/Bangor-ME. Naturally healthy lawns. The drive also brought to you by Union Street Towing. If you're stuck on the side of the road, they have you covered 24/7 statewide, from breakouts to lockdowns. Nope, let me try that again. From breakdowns to lockouts. They'll get you moving fast. Don't mind the dyslexia there. Call 942-4200 Union Street Towing. Driven to be there when you need them the most. A sports center, a weather forecast, and then we break for the drive at 5. Coming up in that first segment, we'll have a meatball today. We'll have some Sox props. We're going to talk a little Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum as well. And then to end the segment, we're opening up the phone lines. There's only 2 of us here in the studio, so taking it into the break for those Red Sox ticket sweepstakes presented by Dunnett's Appliance and Mattress. Be listening for the cue to call next segment. It'll have the number in it, and when you hear it, light up that phone line for your chance to score Red Sox tickets. Drive at 5, coming up next, straight after a Sports Center and a weather forecast.